Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Leagues Ahead, the vodcast of the Arena Gauntlet League, where we are looking ahead to the next tournament offering. And if you've been anywhere on our server over the last week, you'll know that we're preparing for the upcoming Aetherdrift League. I'm Christopher York. I'm your host. I'm a philosopher of sport and games, the founder of the AGL. And joining me today is the head designer of the Aetherdrift tournament and LC member, perhaps the longest serving of the current set, and Adam Schoenborn. And he's going to tell us all about the mechanics for the upcoming league. I'm going to interrogate him, quiz him, rake him over the coals about different kinds of mechanics that some people might find controversial. And we're going to do some muckraking. We're going to do some mechanic revealing. We're going to do some predicting. It's going to be a crazy episode. Welcome, Adam.
Look, I'm back. I was just here.
I know.
I'm loving it.
You're looking back, and now we're looking ahead. We just take a moment to run us through the mechanics, if you would, of Aetherdrift, and tell us where we're at with it. Like, what's just yesterday? I think the final parts of the redacted rule set were revealed, that was your idea as well, right? The idea of redacting some rules, MKM style, kind of like to let people into it slowly to sort of heighten the mystery.
Yeah, I think actually Jordan pitched that when I was looking for interesting ways to do it. Although I put together the execution of it, but I'll give Jordan credit on that. I think that's a great idea. Uh, Trickling out the rules a little bit. I mean, not too slowly. We were going to do one section a day, and it was too slow. I think I wanted to get them out ASAP so people could start pulling them apart and telling us where we made mistakes and what they like. So, yeah, that was fun. We did four different sections, which I can go over now if you want. Talk about what's coming up.
Yeah, let's take them one at a time. Let's start with the track.
Yes, this was like the simplest idea, and I think the genesis of all the rest. Well, I love it. It's just the idea that instead of our usual, who gets the most wins before they're eliminated, let's like, what would it look like? So this was a top down. That's the word, right? For this kind of design. I was like, what would it look like to make this a race? What
Right.
if, what would we have to change? And I was like, well, okay, so there's got to be a finish line. We kind of looked at past leagues and the numbers that we had. It was like, okay, 20 is a nice round number. We're getting roughly that many people with 8 wins in a season. And so we decided, yeah, it's going to be a race first to 20. We kind of had to think about what that would be too, right? Because it's not intuitive how you would do a first. You could do it sort of chronologically, but that wouldn't really be fair or fun, I don't think.
Right, that would privilege certain
Uh,
time zones over certain others, or it privilege the
yeah,
unemployed over the employed, or somebody would suffer and somebody would
totally.
benefit, and we want to try to avoid that in design if possible. So, how do we get around that, inherent unfairness of finishing first?
Well, we had the idea of it being, in the fewest number of total matches, and that all sounded. I mean, I think it is. It's very elegant. It's very simple and compelling. And then there were just a lot of questions. Like we really, for such a simple, tiny tweak, like really all we're doing there's two things. One is adding the finish line, so you stop playing matches at 20, and the other is really adding a new first tiebreaker, which is how few matches you'd played when you got to the number of wins that you're at. So kind of a weird tiebreaker. But it does capture this idea of being the first one to 20 wins or to any number of wins along the way, because that's how ties are going to be broken the whole way down the standings. So just really two small tweaks in terms of like what's going on in the back end. Um, and very conceptually similar to what we had. I mean, some of our discussion was like, does this even change anything at all? Will anything be different, or will this just be a different dressing?
Well,
I think it will be different.
yeah. One of the
Yeah.
things that we had sort of pegged as potentially troublesome would be the fact that once you make it to 20 wins, you're no longer incentivized to play any further matches, and that might result in a sort of drying up of available week six opponents. So, how did you think I mean, in other words, how did you think that we addressed that potential objection or that potential wrinkle?
Well, we have looked at the numbers a bit. I'm not sure if we've actually run simulations yet. We still have a little bit of time to tweak this or add in some kind of safety valve if we think it's necessary. But looking at the numbers in terms of how many people actually reach 20, how many matches that's going to take out, I don't think it's going to take out many matches from the total pool in week 6. And also, I don't really think it's going to change the incentive structure significantly for other people. So, but I mean, it's so interesting because these are such small changes, but we don't know the answer to those questions for sure. So a little bit of this is a big risk, but hopefully it's such a minor tweak that really that risk won't materialize. So I'm not sure. We are still in draft mode for our rules, so we can still tweak them. And if people feel like we should be adding some kind of emergency valve, like we could say that the league committee can allow players to play additional matches after they reached 20 wins if someone needs a match to finish,
Sure,
for
you could
example.
call that like the victory lap mechanic or whatever. Or so you could
Yeah.
we could even
But
like
honestly, I don't think we need
squirrel
that.
away bonus points for that or whatever. You could say we measure who gets in the top eight by who finishes their first 20 matches with wins most efficiently, but
Yeah.
maybe there's a little prize pool split among people who get extra wins. That might be one way to keep week 6 play relevant, but keep the path to the top eight kind of distinct from our normal tournament offerings.
Also, I mean, I think, so hearing that, like, I just think it's going to be relevant anyway. I mean, also, if we run out of matches, really, it's not the end of the world. We don't need everyone to get to 20 wins. So, ideally, 8 players make it to 20 wins or more. We have the tiebreakers there who reached first. And then after that, it'll go to opponent match win. Uh, but if we don't get 8 plus reaching 20 wins, we can just apply that to the people on 19 wins. That'll be fine as well. So, I mean, I don't think that that risk really amounts to much, even if it comes to fruition, like it would be a bit unsatisfying to have people unable to complete their matches. Although, again, if there's multiple people, right, it's very unlikely, unless they've all played each other, that you have more than 1 or 2 people who can't find a match. So
Yeah,
I'm not really worried about it. And we
yeah,
have a history of people being starved for matches at the end of week 6, and we were just fine during those leagues. It's not the most fun when that happens, but it's also not the end of the world.
yeah.
So,
And I mean, I guess that
yeah, so I think we're
the
okay.
given that we do try to make each tournament feel a little different to sort of match the flavor of the set, to try out new things. This seems like it's within the parameters of that. It shouldn't be massively imbalancing. So yeah, I mean I think that's why we agreed to sort of like support the this is the riskiest rule, and it seems like most people just kind
Mhm.
of said, well, let's put it all on black, spin the wheel, and see how it goes. Uh,
It's so interesting, right? Because it's just an unknown unknown. Like talking it through right now, and we've been obviously discussing this for weeks, right? Like we just don't know. Does that pose any real risk to tournament integrity? I think no. Could it result in a kind of big unfun situation? I really think no as well. So I'm relatively confident. We're trying something we don't know what it's even going to look like, but it's not so radically different that I think it's going to produce a totally different outcome than usual.
Yeah, I think that
It is kind of exciting to know.
as a sort of like league historian and someone who sort of appreciates the value of the body of data and stats we build up, sort of like the
Mhm.
intellectual objection, which isn't really about balancing, but just about like measuring performance between leagues. One of my concerns was, well, by taking out those extra wins, it's going to be harder retroactively to see the true ultimate performance of each player, and again compare that performance from that tournament to the next for the same player even. So just by changing the rules, we're changing the available set of data that we can pull from, and this is the first time we've done this. It's exceptional.
Mhm.
So it's going to be a bit of a
Yeah, it'll
bump
just
in
be
the yeah, it'll be a blip in the data set.
one little blip, and it only really, I mean, that concern only really affects I mean, depending on what you're talking about, it really only affects the top players. They're the only people who will play fewer matches, and we're talking about like maybe the top five players in a typical league who get more than 20 wins,
Well,
right?
you think about like,
So
for
it's not a
example, deciding
huge bump.
deciding Pody, for example, and say like, well, like if for instance we had something
Um,
like a cumulative points throughout the season,
uh,
and those players get
uh,
in, this is a league where say I'm doing well, and I have to artificially truncate my good performance, and therefore miss a couple points, which would have been a win and in for me to Pody, Player of the Year 2025. I might feel a little crappy about that, right?
yeah, I mean, I think here that's just it is what it is. I think that difference is going to be so tiny
Right.
that it shouldn't really affect anyone. And if it does, it's not like grossly unfair. It just is what it is. Everyone had the same shot in this league to go this far. But yeah, theoretically, in another league, you might have gotten an extra 3 or 4 wins. Could make the difference for making podium. But to be fair, if you're in that situation, you probably made the top eight. You probably got a shot. You're in the mega draft. I
Right.
think you don't need to worry about it too much. I mean,
Okay.
interestingly, it'll also affect the mega draft because all players will go in with the same number of points, or possibly one fewer point if someone comes in on 19 wins, right? So we had to think about that as well. How is it going to affect the mega draft? I think that's totally fine. We can still use the first tiebreaker, which was how many matches it took you to finish the
To make 20 points.
regular season.
Yeah.
Yeah, to get to 20, exactly. That tiebreaker will still apply to break ties in the mega draft. But yeah, and I mean we've also fairly recently gone to the change of whoever wins the mega draft is already the winner. So we've already sort of
Bake that in.
removed some of that stress on the season performance there anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were a lot of moving parts like that we had to really think through. And it'll be interesting. I mean, also just the idea that this was going to apply not just for the top eight, which was the original idea, but that this is how we should rank people the whole way down the standings. That was something that only came later as we were exploring how to actually do this design. And it's not as obvious as you think. Like we'll have to add essentially a stat where we track when you get to 2 wins, how many matches did it take you to get to 2 wins? 3, 4, 5, all the way up.
Yeah.
And we'll have to display that on the standings sheet.
Yeah.
Things like that weren't obvious when we were coming up with the original idea.
Yeah.
But I actually think they're going to be pretty cool. They're just I mean, I love this is like the sweet spot for me where it's just a small twist, but that has potentially deep implications.
Yeah.
I think that's like a great place to land with the mechanic.
All right. So that's the. This tournament is a race mechanic, and it's the most, I think, controversial. So didn't want to shy away from that. I wanted to tackle that head on right away, and I think you have to do that in order to get to the track mechanic and the punishment pack, the comeback pack mechanics for this league. So, can you tell us like how the idea of the tournament being a race and how where you're at in that race determines what punishment packs you get kind of worked out and how it's gonna play for the players of Aetherdrift League.
Yeah, so in terms of comeback packs, we sort of wanted to have a bit of chaos, but we also felt like this was going to be a pretty self-contained set doing a specific kind of set of things. Like its mechanics are a bit insular, a bit whatever that fancy design word is for
Linear or parasitic?
self-cannibalizing. Parasitic, that's the one I'm looking for.
Mm,
Uh, and potentially, like, if we have too much, outside tomfoolery going on, it might affect the way those mechanics play a lot, right? So that's always an interesting tension because we like to have, sort of a good chunk of chaos, a good chunk of outside sets coming in. Um, and then the more a set, I think, is a closed set of mechanics that don't really want to work well with others. Uh, the more tension there is there about how much should we do that. But we didn't want to go 100% ether drift because we're anticipating a lot of Universes Beyond this year. Half of the sets released will be Universes Beyond, and those are very likely to want to be mono set or much more self-contained. So, we're anticipating that, and we don't want to run a whole year or half a year even of events where it's just one set being played for 6 weeks. So we wanted to bring in chaos. That was the key thing, but we wanted to limit it a bit. So we came up with two mechanics related to that. The first one is the bonus sheets, which was just something I was really looking for. Okay, we've got this track idea. We're racing through the different planes, but it'd be really great if somehow that connected to, the punishment packs you were opening, the comeback packs, excuse me, that you were opening. So the idea there, we tossed around whether that should be determining different comeback packs. We decided not to go that route and instead um, to use a bonus sheet, and each bonus sheet would be tied to one of the three planes that the race takes place over, uh, Avishkar, Amonkhet, or Muruganda. And the idea is we would just curate a list thematically related to those places that ties in the mechanics of the set, cards that should have cool interactions with the cards we're seeing spoiled right now, and just have one card per pack depending on where you are on the racetrack. Which, again, I think that's pretty elegant, pretty, small, but it's even a little risky to implement this because it's not very common for us to have your comeback mechanic tied to the number of wins you have, which is how you determine where you are on the racetrack. So
Hmm.
we had to think about how we would structure the racetrack, how fast people should move forward, then move through it to different planes, and how that would impact having these different, bonus sheets to draw on. So if you lose your first five matches, you're drawing entirely from the first bonus sheet. But if you win your first five, you've skipped over that one and gone right to the next plane. How far apart should the planes be? Those kind of questions. We had to do some math on that, look at the stats, do some guessing, and make sure also that the bonus sheets were designed in such a way that we can't have one being overwhelmingly better or too synergistic compared to the others, for example.
Right.
So a
So
lot of moving parts
it's a little
with
bit
that
it's a
mechanic.
little bit win more in that if you're on a winning streak, you're going to end up further down the track and get a sort of sweeter bonus sheet, presumably.
But well, ideally, you're not getting the part of that that's not true is you're not getting a sweeter bonus sheet. So we did try to be very careful to make sure that the bonus sheets were not escalating. They weren't, that it wasn't going to be a significant advantage if you drew all of your bonus sheet cards from the Muruganda sheet, for example, which is theoretically possible. I mean, I think realistically, people are going to be getting a fairly even spread, uh, but we just don't know. That is an unknown. But it shouldn't be win more in that there's not an advantage to getting more wins and then getting your bonus cards. Uh, it's more, this might be a win timing issue. It might be an advantage, for example, to draw more from the same sheet. So if you lose a bunch all in one cluster, that might be a bit better. But again, I think it's marginal enough,
Right.
an advantage that it shouldn't really have any impact.
Right.
And we've done our best to design around, taking away any kind of advantage from that. So we'll see how it plays out. It's exciting, it's different.
Yeah.
And I really like the idea that, it gives you that sense of progressing through the course.
Yeah, I think that with the sort of nature of the race being, we're starting in Avishkar, what used to be called Kaladesh, then going into Amonkhet, then into Maraganda, as the weeks go by, basically, or as the winds go by, we'd remarked that instead of like saying, well, I made it to week 4, people are going to say, well, I made it to Muruganda, but I died there. And I think
Hmm.
it's going to sort of change the language around eliminations. Is going to kind of change the conceptualization of how your league is progressing and what you think of as success. Getting back to Avishkar, for the second time in the tournament is going to be the goal, maybe more than just week 6 or whatever we normally conceptualize success as.
Yeah, I mean, I love that, right? I love that. This goes back to what I was saying before, but just a few tweaks to the rule set to make it, in line with the theme of the actual card set. And, you can totally change the experience. So hopefully we will see how much that actually materializes. But I do think it's going to be pretty different feel, and hopefully, that does translate, right? That there is this sense of like, oh, I need to win one more to get to Morgana. I don't want to lose right now. I want to get there, or I don't want to be eliminated here. I want to make it back to Avishkar.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a great dynamic to set up. And the set really just handed us that. And I don't always love Magic doing these super gimmicky sets, but I will say in their favor, they make for great league design material, you
Well,
know?
it perfectly fits our
Well,
6 week structure, right? So with
oh,
our cadence of weeks of play, there being 6, 3 out and 3 back, it's sort of made for us in a way to build around.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it fit incredibly well. I do just think like because they're doing such extreme things with the set design, like they're going for these pretty crazy like murder mystery, race car tracks, like Wild West. While that can get a bit too jokey for me in the actual world of Magic, in the world of League design, I just think it's been great.
Yeah, it's
Like
opened up a
those
lot of
going like
avenues.
all out on a theme is just so fun for us to try to implement as a set, right?
Regarding the card set, you said something that I guess I'd like to go back to briefly before we carry on with the mechanical, the parade of mechanics. You mentioned that
Yeah.
Aetherdrift seems parasitic to you. Parasitic is something like
Mhm.
energy, where you need energy to use energy, right? And I think it's maybe, I think it's more open than that. So cycling obviously fits anywhere in any
Yep.
setting.
Yep.
Crewing vehicles and mounting mounts, that can go anywhere. That's kind of evergreen as well. So I see
Yep.
like some of it might be slightly linear, especially the payoff cards, but I wouldn't go so far as to say this is like a city in the bottle set that only has mechanics that relate to itself, or has cards that are so weak that it can't survive the influence of outside sets. I'm interested. I'm very interested to see how the offset cards link up with the main set cards. I think that maybe more of the motivation for limiting the number of offset comeback packs probably more relates to the audience's feeling that they want to play with new cards. And that's because all the cards from Pioneer Masters are cards that if you played Magic long enough, you've seen all those cards. And even though the format itself is new, we needed more offset packs in that format to make that exciting, I think. And I feel like maybe part of the bias here is that, well, Aetherdrift is brand new set. We want to play with the new toys and keep it. I think right now it's between 18 and 20% offset cards and most and up to 80% of onset cards, which again, from my perspective, little high, little worrisome. I worry that by week 5, week 6, we're going to see some samey stuff, or once people start getting like six of a key common, it might get abusive in some way. But that's just my own. That's my own sort of design anxiety sort of creeping in, because
Mhm.
I've been burned so many times by monoset leagues that it's almost become a rallying cry on this vodcast that we have to avoid this at all costs. We've got to let some air in the room to let these tournaments
So
breathe.
I think that's a good point. I do think there's, I did mention parasitic, and I might be exaggerating that. I also, that might be too narrow a view. Like, I do think you're right. It's also because people want to feel like, we're doing the race car set, as well as they want to play with their new toys. I think it's also, that what we were talking about when they're designing these sets, they're going super heavy on theme now.
Yeah,
And I do think that means that the sets that are super heavily themed, even if mechanically they're very flexible, you really feel offset cards in a different way, right? So we've gotten around that a bit here by choosing offset cards for the bonus feats that thematically and location wise tie to what we're doing. Uh, but like looking at the worlds that we visited recently, we had Pioneer Masters and Foundations; those were wide open, and we could do whatever we wanted with those, and we did, right? But then you keep going back; it was Duskmorn, which is like a 1980s aesthetic, right? And then it was Bloomburrow, which was there's no people here; it's all cutesy woodland animals. Uh, then it was Wild West, murder mystery. You have to go back a year's worth of design before you start seeing sets that were a little bit more generic and a little bit more set in the Magic universe, just
Yeah. I,
without being so hyper specific,
I think
right?
that's an important
Like, even just
distinction that you've hit on, Adam. Like sometimes we're hemmed in by mechanics, and sometimes we're hemmed in by theme. And I think that
yeah,
this is an instance of us being hemmed in by theme. And even though that theme is fairly wide open in the sense that they give us 10 very different teams of wacky racers from different planes,
hmm
so there's a bit of like thematic looseness there. The idea that it's
hmm
all racing and concentrating on vehicles is fairly thematically zoomed in. I mean, there's just enough
yeah. Well,
play
like
there, I think.
I really felt that when looking for cards for the bonus sheets,
Yeah.
because you look back over recent sets for cards that you can slot in that are going to kind of link up, and they're just so obvious what set, even just like a combat trick or a removal spell, which used to be like murder or just super generic destroy, right? Like very high end, like open concept spells. And now it's all like sideswipe or acorn blast or whatever, like they're all
Right.
super specific.
Yeah.
Not all, but there is a lot
Key to
more
a
of the
plane or
spells.
key to a creature type or yeah.
Yeah, that it's very like, the number of ones that you can just sort of port across and slip into a set unnoticed really goes down. I should also say this would probably be a good chance to shout out Jack and Lotta who
Yes.
did the bonus sheet. So they went through, they assembled them. I think they did an amazing job. I think the power level's looking exactly where we want it. I think they picked cards that sort of thematically. I mean, Lotta's obviously very into the lore
Yeah.
and the story, and she brought in elements of that. People were asking questions. She was like, "Well, obviously, if you read the story, like this, this actually comes up, right? This is where Jace and Loot were, and I think that that's just such a great, fun little touch. I love that kind of attention to detail. I think they did a really good job.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you try to find, I do think that's one of the things hemming us in is theme, uh, because we've had just thematically distinct sets for 2 years almost that are so distinct and so disparate from each other
Look,
that it's hard to bring them across without them feeling weird.
since we're not shying away from controversy, let's talk a little bit about one of the
Mm,
cards on the bonus sheet, which sparked a lot of discussion yesterday and today. There's an alchemy card for the first time since
yes.
Baldur's Gate, I think, which is a couple years ago.
Might be, yeah. I don't know.
Maybe
Have we slipped any in?
There was some in Neon Dynasty as well, perhaps,
Yeah, that
because
was
it,
earlier though. That was before Baldur's Gate.
right. So I mean, the inclusion of those cards was a disaster in Baldur's Gate. It led to a lot of play imbalance. It led to people thinking that alchemy should never be considered as a main, league tournament card inclusion
Yep.
ever again.
Yep.
Lot of snuck one in, and
Mhm.
I'm one of the camp that thinks again, perhaps too conservatively, that alchemy's got no place in the magic set in the magic world because either they're unbalancing or they're recursive or they lead to play patterns that are problematic. This one in particular doesn't look that abusive, but I imagine that once you
Mhm.
find a way to blink that little pilot and he's going to bring back more and more vehicles, we might still get a little bit of pushback on the inclusion of that one alchemy card. I suppose we can test it and see. What's your thoughts on including alchemy cards in major league tournament offerings?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you put the case against it
Yeah,
pretty well.
yeah.
Like,
Case four.
the big points against it are pretty obvious and
Mm-hmm.
pretty extreme. They are just very badly designed, I think.
Yeah,
I mean, some of them are designed in a way that's surely fun, but I mean, a lot of them are designed in a way that I find no fun at all. They're so powerful. They also distort the game in a way that doesn't feel like you're playing the game that you've been playing for decades.
yeah,
Those are real risks. They are just, especially in a format like ours, where you have to live with these mistakes for months or weeks. But I mean, it's a lot of risk using these cards that just often are very poorly designed, even when they're fun. And sometimes they're imbalanced and unfun, which is the worst case scenario. All that being said, I'm with you in general. Like, I certainly don't want them used much. I would have said I don't want them used at all. Although, we did successfully use them in Neo. You mentioned Neo, and it was pretty much totally uncontroversial. They also appeared, I think, a half dozen of them on the bonus sheet for that set for that league
mm-hmm.
that we ran, and they functioned totally fine. I actually think there was one card in that set, and I don't know if I can remember what it's called in that bonus sheet that was problematic, and it was not. If my memory is correct, it was not even an alchemy card. It was a jumpstart kind of card. It was an unusual card that gave your whole board flying basically when you
Yes.
cycled it. Something like that.
Yeah, that was yes, 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 yes. It got
But
channeled.
the alchemy
It got
cards that were
channeled, and
chosen just
it would give all your team flying, or at
yeah.
least X creatures flying, for how much you paid when you
Yeah,
channeled
and
it.
people didn't know about it existing as a card. It was on the bonus sheet, so it was super rare and it was super powerful. So you didn't know about it from your regular Magic play unless you've been, I guess, super deep into Jumpstart. I could be making up or getting the set wrong, but
No,
this is the
that sounds
gist of it.
right.
Was it was an irregular card, not an alchemy card, if my memory serves correctly. Uh, Game winning, like game ending on the spot. And because it was on the bonus sheet, only a couple people had it in the league, so you weren't ever really even on the lookout for it. So that was my memory of that and the bonus sheet, and it's one sort of issue. But the alchemy cards were fine. I mean, I think a lot of alchemy cards are essentially just normal magic cards. The one that we've chosen does something, that you wouldn't do in paper because it adds a physical card to your hand. So, it's breaking the sort of core laws of our game in a way that's objectionable, but in a way that's actually not very different from creating a token on the battlefield. I mean, in some ways, right, it's just simply less powerful than if it created a, a token version of the same thing on the battlefield, right?
Yeah.
So I think, and there are cards in this set, to my knowledge, that do exactly that. So I don't think there's actually a big risk here. I don't think it's super powerful. I think it's a good card. And I do think this is the spot to use it, right? For me, the judging it on a case by case basis is fine here for something as small as a bonus sheet.
Mm.
The biggest argument really against doing that to me is just, well, if we do it here, we might become more casual about it, and we may end up throwing some cards in a future league that, without really thinking about it, that would ruin a league.
Anything
But
on?
I think that is
Yeah.
like a slippery slope. It's just taking the argument too far,
Yeah, I do. I do think
in my opinion.
this alchemy card is probably one of the least egregious, even though it is a one mana one that puts another card in your hand. So in other words, it's a free card really in some ways, but it's a not a very good card. So that's also features in. Are there any other inclusions, non-alchemy inclusions on the bonus sheet that you're worried about, that you want to look out for, that you're excited to play with?
Sure. Yeah, I think some that caught my eye, like in the Amonkhet bonus sheet, they've got all the gods. I think all of them, or all of the
Yeah, I think
monocolored gods. I don't know if
five
there are other
anyway. The
ones,
five of the monocolors. Yeah.
and they're all powerful, indestructible, heavy hitters.
Yeah.
I think that I don't know enough about designing. Like I've never really done a cube design on my own. I don't, when we do these leagues, I'll suggest cards, but I'm never the person really assembling these sheets because I just am not confident enough that I would be able to do that kind of design. So I don't know, like this, they could be unbalanced. They could be unbalanced, but not so much so that it's really going to create a problem. But those caught my eye. There's a few cards that I flagged for power level. There's some that we've flagged in earlier iterations and removed because we thought they were too powerful as well. So we've already kind of trimmed out most of that, and it's good to have some that are power outliers, I think.
Yeah, it's a really
Um,
it's a tough line to tread, to find the golden mean between cards that are
mm,
exciting enough to want to get, but not unbalancing enough that other people are going to hate you getting them, right? Or they're going to be resentful that they didn't get a chance to open them, right? So it's a weird thing. They can't be boring, they can't be
yeah,
useless, but neither can they be too exciting. So we have to put like
yeah,
you get to sort of like seed things like combo pieces in there, or hosers, or things like that, things that aren't on their own just straight up bombs. And the question, I guess, of whether the Amonkhet gods constitutes bombs, were they in the original format? I remember that you were always happy to have them and happy to play them, but they're a mixed bag. Some are better than others, as I'm sure we'll find out
yeah, and that was a long time ago. So
if they stick in there.
who
Exactly.
knows, right?
So this is going to be the first time that
I
a lot of people get to play with these cards, right? Not a lot of people were on the server for Amonkhet remastered. Not a lot of people were playing when the original sets came out in paper. So yeah, I imagine that there's a lot of people probably going to be excited to play with these cards. What are your odds of getting them? Not great. I'm going to say that. So there's
yeah.
60 cards per sheet, and there's 3 sheets, and you're only going to be able to open the gods if you're somewhere on the track circling Amonkhet when you lose. So we might not see very many. I haven't done the math. That's not my
All
sort
right,
of comfort zone anyway, but I
even
think
if
it's
you
going to be
opened
small.
all of your bonus sheet cards on the same plane on Amonkhet, that would be 10 out of 60. So 1 in 6 of the cards you would get, presuming on average or whatever. You'd hit 1 in 6. There's 5 gods. So you're not even 50-50 to get a god if you open all of your packs on Amonkhet. So I think, yeah, low statistical chance, although with 100 players, people will certainly be opening them.
And some people won't
Uh,
even live till the
yeah.
second run at Amonkhet.
Yep.
So from my calculations on what you said, it's less than 5%. It probably sits at around 3.5 to 4% chance of you cracking any of the gods. And even then, the gods in themselves probably aren't strong enough. They're going to swing you into that color on their own. So there's going to be some gods that don't see play that are going to sit in the sideboard and
Mhm.
thumb their noses at you as they go unplayed for the rest of the tournament. All right, so that was
Yeah,
the
so it's probably
you know,
fine.
so that was the bonus sheet mechanic. Let's talk us through the punishment packs, or sorry, the comeback packs that
Mm.
for the tournament, and how did we select those? How do you get them? Tell us all about it, Adam.
Yeah, so we kind of mentioned, or maybe we didn't, but the main every loss you're going to get a pack of Aetherdrift. So you will get this set is going to feel like Aetherdrift. You're worried a little too much, but I think hopefully we hit a sweet spot. And then you do get the bonus key cards, but the other way we've brought in a bit of chaos is the speed boost. That's what we're calling the additional comeback packs that you're going to be getting. You can take them whenever you lose a match. But the restrictions are you can only take 3 all league long. So if you take them all right away, that's it, you're done. And if you wait to take them, you build up speed. So your speed boost ultimately can be if you wait up to 4 losses, you get the top tier pack, as opposed to if you take it right away, you get what we put as the bottom tier pack. So we went with Kaladesh Remastered as the level 1, the bottom tier. Uh, and then above that is Ikoria. Then above that is the Lost Caverns of Ixalan. And then finally, March of Machines, or March of the Machine, I guess it is. Um, so the idea is they escalate pretty steadily in power up that ladder. And to get the higher power ones, you can't take them right away. You have to wait. So you'll be a number of league losses into the league before you actually get an additional comeback pack if you're saving up to get a March of the Machine pack. So I think there's some great tension there. There's going to be some good diversity in the league. Some people, I think, there's going to be a real argument to go just Kaladesh, Kaladesh, Kaladesh and be done. So I think you'll see some players doing that, although maybe not. Or similarly, you could do the same thing, though, with triple Ikoria. You get your pack pretty fast that way. You get some of the mutate abilities stacking up there if you went all Ikoria. So you can really focus on one set, or you can go for the big sets, and you'll get them much later, but they are extremely powerful sets. So, I mean, I think Lost Caverns is a sneakily very powerful, especially in a set that's got an artifacts theme. And March of the Machine, I think, speaks for itself. That's been one of the, if not the most powerful sets ever in a retail, in the regular standard releases.
Yeah.
So
So that leads me to my next
I
question,
think, yeah,
which is why are
yeah.
why these packs in particular, and why these power
Mhm.
rankings between the packs?
Yeah. So, why these packs? Well, we wanted ones that were connected. Um, we had considered a few other sets in there, and ultimately we had to balance between using cards in our bonus sheets. For example, we really wanted to put mounts into the bonus sheets, so that kind of took Thunder Junction out of play. Uh, a lot of that ended up in bonus sheets, the key cards that were related to what we were doing in this set. Because there's a mounts theme, there's a vehicles theme. So we wanted Kaladesh just because it's super thematically relevant. It's mechanically relevant with all the artifacts, all the vehicles, the creatures that want to pilot vehicles. So that we thought that's a slam dunk. That's easy. It's an older set, even the remastered, which brings up the power level a bit. I think you still feel it is a bit older. Essentially, we've just ranked them almost exactly in chronological. I guess March of the Machine came out a bit before Lost Caverns, but uh, you know, after Kaladesh, Ikoria has cycling. It has some of the prehistoric themes that we'll be touching on in the Morrigandan bit of the race. So dinosaurs, that kind of stuff, big creatures, even some vanilla creatures in there. So I think that touches on a lot of themes. But cycling is probably one of the big ones there, which is a big theme of the set that's coming out. Then Lost Caverns, that has a different take on artifacts. It has all those crafting style mechanics. It has some archetypes that really care about artifacts entering the battlefield. So I think that one's going to be a cool mix. It wants artifacts to go to the graveyard, which is also a little bit of a sub theme in this set. And then March the Machine, that's just, we wanted something really juicy, really exciting. The sort of invasions of the multiverse brought in some different cards from these different areas we're going. It's also similar to Aetherdrift in that it was a set that takes place across a number of planes instead of the usual one plane per set kind of thing that mostly has happened throughout the history of Magic. So it fits in that way as well. So that was what really the selection was about. And then we had to sort of put them in order. We wanted it to be very clearly, I mean, part of the selection process was also we wanted sets that were very clearly steps up in power from each other. So, we didn't want to accidentally put something on the first level that's sneakily more powerful than the second or third realm, because we really wanted that tension, those decision points to be competitive, to be equally valid. We didn't want to trap people into picking a bad set and kind of take away from their league experience that way. So
Yeah,
I think we did a good job finding sets that fit that criteria. And yeah, I like the rankings. I think it's going to be, I have no idea right now what the correct packs are to pick and when to take what.
yeah. My sense is that Ikoria is sneakily powerful and is on par with LCI. I don't think I'm going to hold out. I don't think I'm going to have it in me to hold out for LCI if I can have more Ikoria. Just that low mana value cycling that it offers, like one mana cycling, the potential for companions to pop up, which are sometimes powerful. Again, it's kind of funny. I'll note here, two of the packs selected are the only ones with companions in them in the history of the game. So it's kind of sneaky, a little bit like companion lottery league as well, which I guess fits in with the racing theme because isn't there like a, I think there is one of the racing factions that is all about beasts, the quick beasts or whatever. In any case,
Yeah.
you got your companions as well as your mounts with you on this journey. The odds of hitting a companion probably pretty low, but we're gonna see them.
Mhm.
I think we're gonna definitely gonna see them, and maybe I think seeding a Korea in here is a way of getting out some of the. I think some members of the LC were advocating for a 3 week Korea League recently, so there's a little bit of a hunger for that. Maybe we're gonna scratch that itch. I mean, if this is actually a pretty good use for those packs, cycling being a main set mechanic, and beasts and dinos being another big chunk of it, it seems like this is a pretty good fit. Again, your mileage may vary, and again with the LC, the point here I think is to give the player base problems that don't have obvious solutions, like
Yeah.
strategies. Like, there's no clear dominant strategy. I'll give you mine. You can, I think I'm going to stick to even 2-4-4 or 4-4-2 variations from my 10 losses. I'm going to keep it even, simply because I really value Ikoria and Mom way more highly than LCI or Kaladesh. Now, there's going to be people that open up great packs of Kaladesh. Like you said, there's going to be the strat of opening 3 early and just having that bump of extra cards that are going to help you in the early weeks. That might snowball into a big advantage. I can't see, like, it's very difficult ahead of time to see what the best strategy is going to be. Hold out for the best packs or get that initial surge at the start of the tournament. So this is an interesting mechanic. I'm interested to see what people will do with it. I'm curious to see how people solve their own, let's say, strategic dilemmas and talk to other people. It's a point of engagement, I think, with others in a tournament that kind of needs that, right? Because it's not a faction or a team tournament. People are going to be scratching their heads about this, I bet, in the threads.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be great. I think, one of the other good things about there not being an obvious right answer is that, you're not going to end up regretting your decision after. I mean, maybe if you don't open the right packs and stuff, but you're not, I don't think if
There's
we
always
design it
regret, Adam.
properly,
Don't doubt our players'
okay.
ability to regret decisions they make in our tournaments.
I know. I try to save us from that. I think you're right. Like that's like a great strategy, right? Like Ikoria is one of the most beloved sets. Whenever we do something where people get to select their own sets, Ikoria
Mm-hmm.
is always a top pick. It was one of the top packs to go in March of the Machines when we eliminated sets that were the most popular every week. It
Yeah.
was it went in week 1 or 2, right? I think week 1, if I remember correctly. So, the tippy top of the hierarchy, people love Ikoria, and you might be right. It might be powerful. It certainly has design elements that you look back on, you're like, what were you thinking? I mean, the cycling was obviously super powerful. One mana generic cyclers is very good. So yeah, like that's a great pick. But then there's the case for just getting the packs immediately, right? Like they make such a huge difference to your week 1 pool
Right.
that if you just go Kaladesh, 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 you have a huge advantage right away. And yeah, like those cards probably aren't going to matter as deep into the league as say some cards you're going to pick up in Mom. But you've had them the whole time. And later in the league, you've got 10 packs more of Aetherdrift. So and also if you're taking the 4, like you're going right up to your pack number 8, 9, or 10
Mm-hmm.
before you get those bonus cards, right? So
Yep.
I think the tension is sneaky in a way that, like, even having given it a lot of thought, there's bits of it where I'm occasionally like, oh yeah, like, because I want to do 2 packs of Mom, but it's like, well, you're getting your second one at pack 8.
Yeah.
I've lost 8 of the league. I mean, that's very late,
Yeah.
even if it's very powerful. So I do think we've nailed it. This was Jordan pitched this specific mechanic, and I think it is just like very well designed. It's not too complicated. It's going to be easy to get to make the decision. It features some sets that we love, so and that are cool in terms of thematic links to what we're doing.
Yeah, we just have to
So
keep track of the
I'm
stats. I think this is going to be this is going to be very interesting to look at week by week, and
mhm,
at the end of the league, just stack them up and say, how many packs did players pick from this set versus that
mhm.
set, and that's going to tell an interesting story. I think, especially when we
And
line
that's
up
something
their
we,
performance.
yeah, yeah, I try to do that a lot. I try to check in with that kind of stuff, either for myself personally, but sometimes I publish it or make announcements about it. So like when we did Player of the Year this year, there was each each group of contenders was split off into a pod, and they got to draft packs, all the available packs on Arena, snake draft them, and then make a sealed pool. That was one of our Player of the Year rounds. And, we got pretty clear data on that. I mean, it's a very small sample size, but we got to see where top players rank these sets and also which ones were successful. There were 4 pods, so we did have a bit of a sample size. But, we got to see if one or two of the packs systematically over underperformed,
Right.
and that's the kind of stuff I look at when we're doing these designs. Like when we're talking about power ranking these things, we kind of know LCI is more powerful than people think. March of the Machine we know is extremely powerful, just as people think. Ikoria is powerful and also popular. It might be more popular than it is powerful, but it's not totally out of whack. So, those are things that we have some information from based on how people performed in March of the Machine League, where you could pick whatever, how people performed in Player of the Year, and other places where we can kind of benefit from seeing in our own format how these packs play out.
Yeah, there's a certain amount
So
of
that's information that we try to keep track of.
yeah, there's a certain like base of institutional knowledge that we're building up, and it's valuable, and that can be used in the future. So that's that. I think it's important to know that like these decisions aren't just made randomly. It's not just the LC with the dartboard. Okay, which packs we're handing out. These things are the process, the product of deliberation over weeks. Right, the process can last weeks to
Yeah.
help us get to those conclusions. And yeah, I feel like this is a pretty big home run mechanic. Adam, anything else that we need to tell our players about before this tournament, gets started? Before we fire the starting pistol?
Well, the other tiny thing, which isn't really like a actual mechanic, but that was the thing we're doing was the idea of our feature matches feeding into a little sealed tournament
Yes.
and towards the end of the league.
And this is
So I
sponsored
think
by
that's a cool one.
this is sponsored by Jordan, right?
I think so, or I'll pitch in. I don't know if we sorted it out, but I mean, one of the good things is we have a lot of people who are willing to just make those kind of little contributions to give some prize support to little side things that we do. And I think, here, this is one that I'm really excited for. This was my idea. I think I don't think I'm stealing credit for this, but I was thinking back on having gone with Cody and Caleb, who are, if people don't know them, they're longtime players of the league, who live in Toronto, which is where I live. And we went to a sealed tournament in Murders at Karloff Manor, and we won it. And that
AGL
was,
strong.
or we drew the final intentionally, but I was thinking back on that, and they hadn't the store that ran that hasn't done another one since then. And I was thinking like, oh man, I wish, that was actually super fun doing a 3-way split sealed pool. And I was just like, oh, we should do that, as part of the feature match thing this year. Like that's a great spot to just toss this in. We were looking at different ways to incentivize feature matches. That's something we put time in, right? We did Valgavoth. which people loved. That was something that when we looked back over the year, people really said they liked the Valgavoth matches in Duskmorn. We did the cons matches when we went back to Tarkir. We're always looking for ways to make those kind of things both to reward and encourage people for doing them, but also just ways to spice them up because that's such a cool part of what we do,
Yeah, of course.
you
There's
know?
the
And
sort of social dimension, the community building dimension. Can you run us through the specific mechanic that you have in mind for the or that we arrived at for the feature matches this time around?
well, yeah, so
How does it work?
as in,
Imagine I'm new to the server. Walk me through.
okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
How do I take part?
Yeah, so well, just the idea is that we do three feature matches a week. And so for the first 4 weeks, we're going to run those as qualifiers to a larger sealed tournament. So every winner each week, those three winners are going to be entered into this sealed competition as a single team. I think we should also make them choose one of the teams from the actual set
Right.
and be known as that. So, like when the first week finishes, we'll make them pick whether they want to be robots or pirates or whatever other options,
Sure.
slime, whatever else there was, insects.
We are the slime.
Um, and so they'll be entered as a team in a sealed tournament that we're going to run week 5, I think, in place of feature matches, although we'll iron that out as we get there. But so at the end of 4 weeks, we'll have four separate teams, all groups of people who won their respective feature matches. And then they'll divide up a sealed pool, we'll give them 12 packs to split up. They'll build league sized decks, so 60 card decks. And then they'll just play, it'll be one round, one match, and full team against full team. There'll be a semifinals in that round, first round. And then whichever two players win, that team advances to the finals. And it'll be the same thing there. Each player will line up, just play a single match against one other player on the other team. And we can do it team style, so players can discuss during the matches. They can all stream together, advise each other. So I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be a little bit out there, but it's a like cool, just pure bonus thing. That's something that I really love where we've gotten to with that, where we're putting some of our design energy into stuff that like is just a bonus, really, just a little something for the community, a little something for people who participate in this way. But like some of those have been our most memorable things, the things that aren't even really like mechanics, they're not even really the league, but hopefully this is gonna be something like that where people actually want to qualify, might get a bit competitive. We'll see. I'm
What
excited.
prizes
I
are
want to qualify.
what prizes are on the line for people who volunteer for feature
Well, we're
match
going to give
duty?
everyone an entry into the next league, into Dragonstorm. So we've got the winning team will get each player will get themselves an entry into the next league.
Well, we
So
should clarify
that's
since
the number one thing.
because of the way prizes work, they'll get $10 store credit, which they can use to re up for the next league. Right? That's an important
Yeah, or
caveat.
what if we're doing it as player donations, which we probably will. We
Right.
can just have
Right.
if it's us doing it, Jordan or me or
Gotcha. Yeah. If
whatever,
it's a
we can just
private,
buy them their entries.
absolutely, absolutely. Yep. Sorry.
So, but it doesn't really matter.
Doesn't
Yeah, we
matter.
can give it to you a store credit if you
Yep.
want. I mean, we're flexible. But the idea is, this is, I think adding just like that bit of stakes, like it's not anything insane.
No,
But like
but it's worth
it,
fighting for.
it, it kind of just recognizes this is something important, and it gives it that vibe. And like I'm not in it for the stakes. I want to play a sealed tournament that gets streamed, and I want to beat some people. So
Well, it sounds like
that's what I'm in it
something
for.
a lot different for feature matches. I think it'll probably serve the purpose of reinvigorating them, and playing for
Mm.
registration in the next league. That's not nothing. That's a pretty good
No,
prize. That's like $10 that you don't have to spend out of your store credit or out of your pocket. So that might actually create a bit of a lineup for participation in the feature matches that we've been lacking, right, in recent leagues. So I'm thinking that's a
I mean, we've been filling out mostly. We've had occasional weeks that don't fire, but we've mostly been getting pretty enthusiastic participation. But this might widen that, and that can have negative side effects. I mean, I don't want people to feel like they want to participate and they're not being chosen, or. So I mean, I'm interested to see if it ever does get like there's a literal queue to get into a feature match. But I think it's great. I think, and this is the kind of thing that if it is successful, we could revisit this again in any league,
Yeah,
really. Like it fits into our racing theme, but like really, we could make this a tradition if it really kicks off.
yeah.
Um,
I mean,
that's been an interesting thing. I think we've been going from, I mean, this is going to sound maybe too boastful or whatever, but I think we've been going from success to success. We've had some real home runs like the Valgavoth matches. Uh, and sometimes we're moving so fast. And as we kind of discussed before, some of these things are so linked to set themes,
yeah,
very strong, distinct set themes, that we just don't come back to them. So sometimes it's interesting, like everything we're doing is so original, which is great. I mean, on some levels, that's part of the reason I think it's been so successful. But there are ones where I'm like, wow, I really wish we could revisit the March of the Machine mechanic where we're burning packs as people select them,
right.
or I really wish we could revisit Thunder Junction. When we launched that, people were all like, yeah, we should be doing this every league. This is how punishment packs or comeback packs should function, right? Is we
Yeah,
should have a market for it. This is just a generically good mechanic.
yeah.
And that was a year ago.
Yep.
And we
Hard to
haven't even
believe.
thought about
Hard to
doing that a year,
believe. But that's the
right?
thing. So
So,
I
yeah.
think what you've done, Adam, is you've identified a couple of good problems that we have, right? So as you pointed out, we're sort of building up a library of tournament mechanics, right? And we're sort of
Mm,
just chugging through a lot of original design space, and we're creating a resource that one day we can return to in a different way with a different skin under different conditions. But I do think we're in a really good space. I don't think it's overly self-congratulatory to say that we've seen some pretty original tournament designs come out, and they've all been happily functional and fun for the most part. And it's so that's a good problem to have, I think. If you have a pet mechanic that you want to return to, or a tournament design that you're exceptionally fond of, and you really can't wait for it to come back, that's a good problem for us to have as a community and as a league committee, right? And the other thing,
yeah, that's a good perspective.
the other good problem that we have is like if this team sealed feature match mechanic turns out to be so popular that there's a lineup for it, and we want to do it again, and we got to think of some sort of heuristic for fair inclusion for the people that are left out. That's a great problem to
Mm,
have, right? That's
yeah,
a
it's good.
one that both of those are really great problems, and I think you're right to sort of point them out as like this is exactly where we want to be now.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. They are good problems to have, but it is like it's kind of wild to me to think that we've had some of these mechanics that or I mean, at least that but I think that I can safely say that everyone really enjoyed, or most people really, really enjoyed. And we haven't even thought about going back to the general store from OTJ or planar elimination from March of the Machine. That's like pretty crazy that we're moving at this pace, and that we just every league, or not quite every league, but almost every league is an entirely new design space that we're getting, right?
Yeah, I mean, even
Like,
just we're wrapping up Pioneer Masters now, and the Planeswalker mechanic. I mean, it had some people who didn't like the limitations in week 3 and 6, but for the most part, I think that was a home run mechanic
yeah,
that
it's great.
and sort of intuitive and new at the same time, and it did the job of energizing a set that, frankly, a lot of people weren't that jazzed about, and that we had to sort of start the tournament late because of Wizards' aggressive release schedule. So I think that despite those things, we had a fairly big and competitive league that was a lot of fun. So yeah, again, I think that's also an indicator that we're in a pretty good space. Don't know if we should end it up with that self-congratulatory note, but I'm feeling pretty good. Is there anything else you want
Yeah,
to?
I'm okay with it.
Is there anything else you want to add, Adam? We're getting up towards the hour mark here, so we should wrap her up. We should draw this race to a close.
I'm ready for the league to start. Let's go. I think that's a good primer. And now let's suit up. I'm ready. I want to jump in my race car and go.
Start your engines. Let's get racing.
Get ready. We need all of those. Someone should make me a list of those tropes to announce every week.
Adam,
I'll watch some NASCAR.
thanks so much for everything you do for the league. Thanks for coming on today and discussing the mechanics, and thanks for heading up the design for Aetherdrift League. Looking forward to playing in this world that you helped create for us.
Thanks for having me.
All right,
See you
man.
there.
Talk to you soon. Bye bye.